Hey guys, tonight we're diving deep into the sands of time, where golden crowns glint under scorching suns, and giant statues gaze blankly across the desert. You are not just anyone, you're a pharaoh of ancient Egypt. A living god. A divine ruler. The beating heart of the universe, they say, sounds glamorous, right? Until you realize your life is less godlike and more controlled puppet in eyeliner. So, before you get comfortable, take a moment to like the video and subscribe, but only if you genuinely enjoy what I do here, and while you're at it, let me know where you're tuning in from, and what time it is for you. Now, dim the lights, maybe turn on a fan for that soft background hum. And let's ease into tonight's journey together. Before you even take your first breath, your future has already been carved in stone, literally. The court astrologers read omens in the stars, priests chant in your mother's chamber, and somewhere in the palace, a scribe is already sketching your name beside a falcon. You're not just born. You're declared. You emerge not into a cradle, but into an institution. You are a symbol. A hope. A divine continuation of the sun god Ra, which, as it turns out, comes with more pressure than any newborn deserves. The moment you squint up at the sun, dozens of adults are bowing, whispering prayers, and possibly debating your circumcision schedule. You grow up surrounded by opulence, polished alabaster floors, walls painted with lotus flowers, and pillars so tall they seem to support the heavens. But the people who raise you, they aren't your family. They're eunuchs, viziers, and tutors in gold-threaded robes. Everything you do is rehearsed. There's no run around the palace barefoot moment in your childhood scrapbook. Everything from your posture to your first laugh is closely observed, discussed in whispers, and judged by men with long beards and even longer titles. Your name. You don't even get to choose it. It's a collection of divine syllables handed down by elders who pretend to understand the will of the gods. Maybe you're Thutmose, Ramses, or Amenhotep. Maybe you're named after a solar disk. Whatever it is, it's not Brian. And forget nicknames. No one dares call you Little Mo or Tutty. You are son of Ra, lord of the two lands, he who grasps the crook and flail, and you better get used to hearing it 5 times a day. There are ceremonies just for you learning to crawl. A priest sprinkles sacred water on your baby feet while the rest of the country prays you don't fall and accidentally doom the crops. You're not allowed to be average. No tantrums, no scraped knees, no silly drawings of crocodiles with hats. Every moment is choreographed. You're presented to nobles like a new artifact, carried around on golden palanquins, and taught to wave to the crowd at the tender age of 3 before you even understand what the crowd is cheering for. And speaking of those crowds, they don't see a toddler. They see a god in training. Your mere presence is supposed to bless the land. If you trip, that might be interpreted as a bad omen. A slip of the tongue. Surely a message from the gods, one that the priests will spend weeks decoding while arguing over the proper sacrificial poultry to make it go away. You do not cry in public. If you do, someone invents a myth about why Ra weeps at sunrise. If you laugh too hard, it's a celestial sign. Your childhood becomes a minefield of unintended prophecy. Even your toys aren't really toys. You're handed miniature scepters, golden lions, and carved boats with ivory sails. They're beautiful, but try building a sandcastle with that. And good luck playing tag when the other kids are too afraid to tag you back. Your education starts early. You're not just memorizing the alphabet. You're learning how to recite offerings, interpret dreams, maintain ma'at, cosmic order, and prepare yourself for future godhood. Tutors in white linen drone on about dynasties and taxes while you sneak glances at the Nile, longing to splash in its shallows like the village kids. Spoiler, you don't get to. By age 5, you're already attending ceremonies where priests chant until your eyes glaze over. You're expected to smile through incense smoke and walk like you understand what the high priest just said about the fertility of the Apis bull. You don't, but nod anyway, You do get a pet, perhaps a well-groomed leopard or an ibis named something like Divine Beak. But no roughhousing. These aren't pets for cuddles. They're part of your royal image. Their feathers are oiled. Their fur combed daily. One wrong move, and a servant spirits them away while apologizing profusely for exposing you to such indignity. Meanwhile, your parents, yes, even your own mother, refer to you in the third person during formal occasions. The Son of Heaven is pleased with his lentils today, she says, while you just want her to pass the bread, and the lentils. Cold. Always cold. Because nothing is served until a priest blesses it, a servant tests it for poison, and a steward offers it in a golden bowl. Meals aren't meals. They're rituals, even naps are suspicious. If you fall asleep outside the designated divine rest window, it might trigger a council meeting. Is the pharaoh ill? Has he seen a bad omen? Should we consult the temple oracle? You just wanted 5 minutes under a palm tree, your drawings are taken seriously. If you sketch a crocodile eating the moon, a scroll is sent to the temple of Thoth. The young king dreams of celestial imbalance. One scribe declares. You try to explain it was just a doodle, but it's too late. There's already a parade planned to cleanse the heavens. Historians still argue whether pharaohs had any real joy in childhood. Some claim they played like other children in secret gardens behind the palace. Others say even their laughter was rehearsed. One fringe theory suggests pharaohs were allowed one day a year of normalcy, a hidden festival of mischief where they wore plain clothes and got to splash in the Nile. There's little proof, but the idea is oddly comforting, so you grow up loved, but not known. Revered, but not touched. Watched, but never really seen. You are gold leaf pressed onto a child's soul. Divine and alone. The expectations shimmer like the sun on polished stone, beautiful, blinding, and heavy beyond belief, and this is only the beginning. You grow a little taller, and the palace grows smaller. Now that you're approaching what they call the age of reason, which, let's be honest, just means you're old enough to sit still for longer than 15 minutes, they begin the next phase, full immersion in Pharaoh school. You don't get a backpack. You get a lap full of scrolls, a chaperone who smells permanently of incense, and a schedule that would make a Spartan cry. Your mornings begin before the sun even blinks over the horizon. A eunuch wakes you by fanning your face with ostrich feathers. He whispers that the stars are in alignment and that it's time for your sacred ablutions. You yawn, but that's not allowed. Yawning is considered disrespectful to the gods. Unless done behind a golden screen, which they've thoughtfully provided. You stifle it and step into a bath infused with lotus oil and crushed turquoise. It's supposed to inspire divine thought. It mostly just stings your eyes. You're dried, oiled, and dressed in fresh linen by 6 attendants. The cloth is stiff and starchy. You itch constantly, but scratching yourself is considered uncouth for a pharaoh, so you learn the art of the slow rub against marble pillars when no one's looking. Your tutors await in the ivory chamber, where golden ibis motifs watch you from the walls with unblinking eyes. You start with writing not fun, messy letters like a regular kid, but precise hieroglyphs. Drawn with reed brushes on sheets of papyrus that cost more than a priest's annual salary. You dip the brush, you breathe, you mess it up. The scribe sighs. You start again. And again. And again. They teach you the names of gods, kings, and distant lands you'll never visit. You memorize royal decrees from 3 dynasties ago and learn how to draw each title of a visiting dignitary's extended family tree. If you miss one tiny detail, they take it as a sign of disrespect. To the ancestors. After hieroglyphs comes diplomacy, your least favorite. You're coached in the art of smiling without sincerity, a skill your advisor says is crucial for dealing with foreign envoys. They practice by making you sit across from a stuffed goat wearing a feathered headdress. You are to smile and say, "Blessings upon your house, noble visitor." If your smile wavers, they bring the goat back again tomorrow, and then comes religion class. You'd think being a living god would get you out of having to learn about gods, but no. You must know every myth, ritual, and taboo. You have to recite the story of Osiris's dismemberment and Isis's heroic reassembly of his body, yes, all the pieces without laughing. One time you giggle when you say sacred phallus, and they make you chant great is the order of Ma'at for an hour straight, lunch. There's no recess, but they do feed you. Kind of. You're served by 3 attendants, and each bite must be inspected. Poison is a real concern. So is improper food temperature. One piece of undercooked duck liver and suddenly the royal chefs are whipped. You chew slowly, nervously. A bite of honeyed bread, a nibble of figure. You're not even allowed to use your hands. Everything must be placed delicately into your mouth with gold tongs. You're told this is elegant. You suspect it's just annoying. Historians still argue whether royal children had any free time at all. Or if their days were as tightly controlled as the Nile's irrigation canals. Judging by your life, they weren't exaggerating. After lunch, you're rushed to the military courtyard. Because yes, at the tender age of 9, you're being taught the art of war. Not the kind where you get to swing swords or ride chariots, not yet. First, they teach you formations using tiny sand models. You watch ants crawl over the battlefield, wondering if the ants know more about strategy than you do. A general with a scar down his cheek shouts about flanking and phalanxes while you squint at sun-blinded sand and try not to sneeze. It's dusty. Always dusty, and then there's death training. No, not how to die but how to talk about it. You must memorize the burial rituals, the names of all the embalming gods, and the proper way to bless a dead crocodile. You write fake letters to the goddess Hathor, thanking her for the safe passage of Uncle to Tank. You don't have an Uncle to Tank. But you learn to mourn him convincingly. The temple priests host monthly simulation funerals for practice. They dress a sack of grain in funerary linen, draw eyes on it, and you have to give a heartfelt eulogy. He was noble. He was loyal. He enjoyed figs. You say it with a straight face. Everyone nods in approval. The sack of grain is buried beside the palace sycamore. In one rare moment of free time, you sneak into the stables and pet the royal donkey. You name him Horus the Quiet. For 3 minutes, you feel like a real kid. Then the guards find you and lecture you for 30 minutes on how contact with animal fur can weaken your spiritual aura. You are not allowed to pet Horus again. At night, you collapse into your massive bed, embroidered with scenes of the gods bestowing wisdom upon noble kings. You feel none of that. Your muscles ache from sitting straight all day. Your head swims with titles, omens, and the subtle differences between blue faience and lapis lazuli. There's a knock at the door. Your dream interpreter arrives. Yes, you're required to recount your dreams every morning, and if you don't have any, they assume spiritual blockage. So now you try to make them up. Last night, you say you dreamt of the ibis-headed Thoth riding a giant catfish. The interpreter nods. A sign of wisdom emerging from mystery, he says. You try not to roll your eyes. Your nurse tucks you in and begins a lullaby about how the sky goddess Nut swallows the sun every night and births it again every morning. You wonder if Nut ever just takes a break, but you can't rest yet. You remember your poetry lesson tomorrow. You must recite a new hymn in honor of the flood season. It has 74 lines. You only know 12. You whisper them to yourself as you drift off. You are the lotus on the waters. You are the breath of eternal order. You are. You forget the 3rd line. You'll be punished with a bonus prayer. You dream of running through reeds barefoot, but in the dream, your tutor appears wearing a falcon mask and tells you to stop being undignified. You wake up sweating. There's a scribe sitting in the corner, writing. Always writing, by the age of 10, you're fluent in politics, death, battle, religion, and diplomacy. But no one's taught you how to skip stones or climb trees. You envy the stable boy, even though you outrank a deity in theory. And the worst part? You still have to go through puberty. And spoiler alert, your royal acne will be treated with fermented goose fat and spells. You're not even a teenager yet, but the palace halls already echo with whispers of marriage. Not love. Not even partnership. Strategic alliances, bloodline purification, and the occasional convenient silencing of a rival household. That's what marriage means here. You try to imagine holding someone's hand just because you want to, and the thought is immediately squashed by a scroll outlining possible sister wives. Your family is a constellation of chaos. There are mothers, stepmothers, half-brothers, uncles, advisors who claim to be distant cousins, and priests who say they were spiritually adopted into the royal bloodline. Everyone's related, and no one trusts anyone. It's a tangled vine of ambition wrapped in linen. Your biological mother is revered publicly. In private, she competes with your father's other wives for influence. Every fruit placed on your breakfast plate is a political decision. One morning, your figs come sliced instead of whole. That means your mother is winning. The next day, they're gone completely. Someone else gained the upper hand. Your older brother once offered you a carved hippo figurine. You thought it was sweet, until a servant gently whispered that accepting it might be interpreted as naming him heir if something unfortunate were to happen to you. You handed it back with a nervous laugh. He didn't laugh. At dinner, you sit at the center of a long alabaster table while your extended family arranges themselves by influence. The closer they sit, the more dangerous they are. Cousins smile with teeth that mean nothing. One aunt coughs during the soup course and 3 people go pale. The high priest blesses the lentils just to be safe. You learn the art of passive warfare, an eyebrow raise, a delayed greeting, a seemingly harmless gift delivered by an outsider. All are strategies in a slow, smothering game. You don't get to win this game. You just try not to lose it too quickly. Historians still argue whether pharaohs had real personal relationships or merely existed as ceremonial chess pieces moved by unseen hands. From your vantage point, the answer is easy. You're more a symbol than a son. Sometimes you retreat to the Hall of Ancestors. It's a quiet room filled with statues of your predecessors. Stone faces lined up in eternal judgment. You stare into their empty eyes and wonder how many of them were actually happy. Probably none. The happier ones are the ones who died quickly. Or young. Or mysteriously. One of your tutors mentions the smiting of the rebels' festival. You ask who the rebels were. He answers, cousins. You do not ask follow-up questions. You're finally informed of your engagement at age 12. Your bride-to-be is your half-sister. You've seen her twice, once when she poked you with a reed and ran away, and once when she cried during a hymn recital. You're told she's of suitable purity, which is apparently more important than whether she's kind or interesting. Or literate. The wedding will take place when you're 14, but preparations begin now. There are ceremonies to coordinate, omens to read, crocodiles to bless. She is moved into the same palace wing. You both attend joint rituals where you're dressed as Osiris and Isis, which would be romantic if you weren't both trying not to faint from the heat under layers of lapis and gold-threaded linen. Sometimes, you steal glances at each other during incense offerings. Neither of you speaks. There's nothing to say. You're both trapped in matching golden cages, flanked by advisors and expectations. One evening, during a rare moment of peace, you find her in the papyrus garden. She's trying to sneak lotus petals into a scroll like a prank. You smile. She almost does. Then the high priest appears and begins lecturing her on the symbolism of floral offerings, and the moment dies. You never speak of it again. You're warned that a pharaoh must produce heirs quickly and abundantly. The survival of the divine lineage depends on it. No pressure. You're still awkward, your voice is cracking, and your skin is a patchwork of ointments designed to purify the complexion of Ra's chosen. Meanwhile, midwives are already being selected for the next generation. Marriage, of course, won't stop the rest of your family from circling. Some relatives turn to religion, becoming priests to gain influence in temples. Others take military roles, amassing loyalty among commanders. One cousin funds a new granary, earning the people's admiration. You build a decorative obelisk out of guilt and spite. There are rumors of poison. Always rumors. You refuse wine from anyone you haven't personally watched pour it. You keep a food taster close. You sleep with a curved dagger beneath your pillow, although it's ceremonial and wouldn't cut through cheese. Even the architecture becomes a weapon. The palace has secret corridors. Servants whisper through the walls. You once hear your name followed by a nervous laugh and the words "until the eclipse." That night, you don't sleep. Family festivals are a special kind of terror. There's dancing, feasting, offerings while every participant silently evaluates who's gaining favor. You're handed a roast goose while your aunt presents an embroidered shawl she personally wove. She absolutely did not. You nod politely. She nods back like a snake who just tasted the air. One uncle claims to receive divine visions involving your reign. You're 9 years older than him, but no one questions this. The visions conveniently predict you'll need a co-regent soon. He just happens to be available. Isn't that lucky? You become an expert at watching smiles. Real ones crinkle the eyes. Royal ones do not. By 15, you've learned how to write polite death threats disguised as holiday greetings. May the Nile bless your house with abundance unless it doesn't. You've also learned how to accept compliments without trusting a single word. You look radiant today, Majesty, someone says. You immediately wonder if your eyeliner smudged. Sometimes, late at night, you remember simpler things like that donkey you once petted. You wonder if he still lives in the stables or if he became part of a festival stew. You'll never know. You're too important to ask. In the quiet moments, you drift to thoughts of escape. Maybe sailing away on a reed boat. Maybe pretending to be a commoner and running a modest bakery near Thebes. But your face is literally carved on temple walls. You couldn't blend in even if you wore a sack, and so, you stay. At family dinners. At ceremonies. At funerals for relatives you suspect weren't actually dead the first time. You stay because pharaohs don't run, they just watch. And smile. And try to survive the people who are supposed to love them most. The Nile shimmers outside your palace window, but you rarely notice. You're too busy balancing a headdress made of gold and peacock feathers, trying not to sweat through your formal linen tunic during another public appearance. Because now, finally, you are pharaoh in full. You're still barely shaving, but your official titles are 26 words long and require a separate scroll just to announce you. You're the ruler of the two lands. The chosen of the gods. The voice of Ma'at. And none of it feels like yours. Today's agenda includes 3 temple visits, 2 council audiences, 1 granary blessing, and just for fun a debate over canal taxes. Meanwhile, the peasants you allegedly serve are lounging in the shade with dates and flatbread. Enjoying the breeze off the water. You're listening to 2 ministers argue over the optimal grain storage temperature. They don't even expect you to participate. You're more of a ceremonial pressure plate. They speak in long sentences, punctuated by the occasional glance toward your throne. You nod sagely. That's your job. If you nod twice, that means agreement. If you nod once and then look upward, that means bring me my personal scribe. It's all code. You're fluent in nodding, you don't remember the last time you were alone. Not really alone. There's always a servant nearby, or a guard, or a priest offering unsolicited wisdom about lunar phases and royal destiny. You once tried to dismiss everyone just to enjoy a quiet moment. Within 5 minutes, 3 different advisors burst in, assuming you were plotting to overthrow yourself. Ceremonies are your full-time job now. You walk in parades while flanked by fanbearers. You attend offerings where priests chant for so long your legs go numb. You sit beneath colossal statues of yourself, surrounded by flowers that attract bees that no one dares swat. And you are expected to smile. Always. Historians still argue whether the pharaohs actually ruled or merely performed the role of ruler while the bureaucracy handled everything behind the scenes. Based on your daily calendar, it's clear, you're more mascot than monarch. You cut ribbons with knives shaped like ankhs. You pretend to bless barley fields while wearing sandals so ornate they scrape your ankles. You shake hands with foreign envoys whose names you don't remember but who all seem to want mutual eternal grain-sharing treaties. One ambassador gives you a live giraffe. You have no idea what to do with it, and still, the people cheer. Because you are Ra in human form. Horus made flesh. Your image glows on temple walls. With idealized muscles and perfect posture. Your real self, meanwhile, has a stiff neck from crown weight and chronic indigestion from ceremonial honey cakes. One day, you ask your vizier if you can skip the 3rd temple procession. Just once. His face contorts in horror. Majesty, he whispers, the calendar was blessed by the high seer and cross-referenced with the stars. Deviating now could unravel cosmic harmony. So you nod. Once. Then twice. You go to the temple, your subjects bow as you pass, but none of them make eye contact. Looking directly at your face is a crime unless permission is granted. Which is ironic, considering your nose is carved into 100 cliffs, at council. A military advisor suggests expanding into Nubia. A treasurer counters that the gold shipments from Kush are late. A priest murmurs something about divine wrath. You say, let the gods guide our chariots. It means nothing, but everyone nods approvingly. The minutes are recorded as, His Majesty wisely aligns our expansion with the will of the heavens. You try to sit down and are reminded again that your ceremonial chair is stone. Golden laid, yes, but still stone. You shift. You squirm. You adjust your posture to noble curiosity, which you practiced in front of a mirror for 3 weeks. Once, during a festival of renewal, you were required to race a sacred bull through the temple grounds. You're not athletic. You tripped over your own cloak and fell into a trough. The crowd gasped. A scribe immediately declared that the pharaoh had granted symbolic fertility to the land through divine immersion. They painted a mural of it. It shows you floating heroically. You remember choking on barley chaff. Afternoons are for listening. To complaints, to prayers, to requests from nobles seeking favor. You hear a baker ask for permission to use cinnamon in the royal kitchen. You grant it. This becomes a national holiday. Cinnamon Day. You still don't like cinnamon, you're rarely allowed to say no. Every decision is filtered through prophecy, dream interpretation, and whether Mercury is in retrograde, except no one calls it that. They say Thoths I blink sideways. At sunset, you climb the palace steps for the daily sun farewell ritual. You must hold a bronze mirror and reflect the last light of Ra back to the heavens. Once, a cloud ruined the moment, and a priest had to explain for hours how it was metaphorically still valid. You stood there the whole time, arm trembling, mirror heavy, pretending to care. Dinner is formal. You eat under the watchful eyes of your ancestors' portraits. Each dish has a meaning. Each sip of wine is blessed. You can't just dig into a lamb skewer. First, you must bless the grain, honor the spirit of the animal, sip from a ceremonial cup, and wait for your taster to nod. Then, and only then, can you eat. The food is lukewarm by that point. But divine, sometimes, you try to joke with your attendants. A harmless pun about falcon-headed gods. They chuckle awkwardly and ask if you're testing their loyalty. You give up. You once asked to go fishing. Just a normal day out on the Nile. A flotilla of 20 boats was arranged, each with guards, servants, musicians, and a backup sacred ibis in case the first one flew away. You caught nothing. You weren't allowed to use a real hook. Majesty, they said, the fish should offer themselves willingly. At the end of the day, you return to your chamber, your back aching, your crown removed by 6 attendants working in practiced silence. You look at your reflection in the polished obsidian. You look regal. You look exhausted. You remember being a boy who just wanted to laugh at a goat in a headdress. That boy is buried somewhere beneath layers of protocol and perfumed oils, and tomorrow, you do it all again. Same scroll, different sacred sunrise. You're the son of gods, the face on the coin, the chosen of the heavens, and yet, none of that protects you from the truth. The real power lies in the temples. You might wear the crown, but the priests write the script. From the outside, it seems like you're in charge. You bless the Nile, appoint officials, declare wars. But every time you lift your scepter, there's a priest 2 steps behind, nodding just slightly too long, gently steering the direction of your decree with a whisper about divine will. And when divine will speaks, no one argues. Your kingdom is ancient, yes, but it runs on scrolls, rituals, and institutional memory that predates your entire bloodline. The priests have temples larger than your palace. Their statues of Ammonius gleam brighter than your throne. Their chants go on for hours, echoing through stone halls scented with myrrh and mystery. And they are everywhere. In every city, every village, every decision, they own land. They control grain. They interpret the dreams that decide whether you go to war. And they do it all while calling you His Majesty, bowing with just enough reverence to distract you from the fact that they never actually follow your orders unless those orders already align with theirs. Historians still debate whether pharaohs were manipulated by the priesthood or simply went along with them to keep the peace. You suspect it's both. Because if you push back too hard, the gods themselves might disapprove, and the gods, as the priests constantly remind you, speak through them. You remember once, early in your reign, suggesting that temple taxes be adjusted slightly. Just slightly. You thought, maybe fewer golden incense burners. That night, lightning struck a statue of Sobek near Memphis. The priests declared it a divine warning. You issued a retraction and donated 3 ivory fans as penance. Sometimes you think about the high priest of Ammonius, your real rival. He wears robes embroidered with starlight. He walks like a man with nothing to fear. His temples smell better than yours. And worst of all, he has more scribes. Your own scribes report to him first. You know this. Everyone knows this. But they pretend not to. So you pretend not to notice. At court, you speak. And then the high priest speaks. When you say something bold, he coughs. When you declare something final, he raises an eyebrow. Your words are law. His eyebrow is stronger. One morning, you wake to find that the temples have declared a new festival in your honor. You didn't ask for this. You didn't approve it. But there it is, sacred now, unchangeable, carved into limestone. The festival of the renewed Pharaoh, where you must stand motionless for 6 hours while priests chant about your undying wisdom. You try to wiggle your toes once. A novice faints, and then there are the oracles. You'd think that as Pharaoh, you'd be the one handing out wisdom. Nope. The oracles speak. You listen. Sometimes they get messages that are suspiciously convenient. Like the time they announced, mid-court, that the gods disapproved of your new chariot design. Something about cursed wool symmetry. You hadn't even told anyone about it yet. You suspect spies. Not soldiers. Priestly spies. They're more dangerous. They wear sandals, carry scrolls, and can recite the lineage of every sacred goose from here to Karnak. They smile often. That's how you know they're hiding something. Your daily rituals aren't for you. They're for the gods, yes, but more importantly, for the priests. You must appear in the temple at dawn to awaken the statue of the god. You're given a golden feather to brush its face. You chant a verse you don't understand. The statue doesn't respond, obviously, but the priests nod as if it blinked. You once asked what would happen if you skipped the morning ritual. Your advisor gasped so loudly you thought someone died. Majesty, he said, without your divine breath, the god might not awaken, and the sun itself could stall. You didn't test the theory. Even in private, the priests linger. They perform protective rituals on your bathwater. They leave scrolls under your pillow to ward off nightmares. One priest tried to anoint your scalp with crocodile oil to preserve your divine insight. You still smell it days later. Sometimes, they gift you tokens, amulets shaped like eyes, feathers, tiny coffins with spells inside. You accept them all, knowing full well they're watching for how you react. Do you flinch? Do you hesitate? Every blink is a message. Every pause, a prophecy. Your own personal beliefs stopped mattering long ago. You're not allowed doubt. You are the gods. So when the priests say the stars have spoken, you nod and say, it is clear. Even when it isn't. There's a saying, the gods walk in the temples, but the pharaoh speaks for them. In reality, the pharaoh murmurs vaguely while the temples publish entire scrolls of their own interpretations. They hold the myths. They guard the rituals. They write the histories. You might win a battle, but they'll decide how it's remembered. They say you're eternal. That your Ka will live on through statues and prayers. But it's the priests who decide where the statues go. And who gets prayed to, and someday, when your bones are dust, and your mummy lies stiff in a gold box, the priests will write your story. They'll choose which flaws to omit. Which triumphs to embellish. They'll even decide how your soul is weighed in the afterlife. If they liked you, you'll become a legend. If not, a footnote, so you smile. You bow. You offer incense with steady hands and steady breath, and when the high priest smiles at you during the solstice ceremony, you smile back, knowing full well he just moved a piece on a game board you're no longer allowed to see. It's barely mid-morning, and you're already sweating through your divine tunic. Why? Because being pharaoh doesn't grant you an exemption from the rules of Egyptian fashion, it just makes them worse. You are the personification of Ma'at, the eternal harmony of the cosmos, and Ma'at apparently demands that you wear enough gold to tip over backwards in a strong breeze. Start with the headdress. A layered Nemes crown, pressed tight against your scalp like a strip of molten parchment, designed to keep your divine thoughts from escaping. Add to that the golden cobriorius poised just above your brow, eternally ready to spit imaginary fire at your enemies. It's not glued. It's attached by an ornate headband that digs into your temples all day. Headaches? Very sacred. Then there's the collar. Not just any collar, a broad one, crafted from lapis lazuli, turquoise, carnelian, and faience beads. It covers your entire chest like the world's fanciest bib. It weighs as much as a small melon. If you dare shift your shoulders wrong during a public blessing, it swings up and hits your chin like a divine slap. And don't get started on the kilt. Wrapped, pleated, and pressed into stiff angles, it's less of a garment and more of a geometric puzzle. You need help getting into it. You definitely need help walking in it. When you sit, the whole thing folds awkwardly, making you look like you're perched atop a stack of towels. Very holy towels. But still, your sandals. Gold-tipped, of course. Lined with palm fibers that scratch. Blessed by priests. Too slippery on polished floors, yet somehow also too rough for your feet. One time you tripped during a festival march and fell directly into a display of sacred onions. That mural was quickly erased from the temple wall. Historians still argue whether pharaohs wore all this regalia every day or just for rituals. But if you're living it, the answer is clear: too often. Every time there's a harvest, an eclipse, or a visiting dignitary boom, it's time to suit up in 10 pounds of symbolism. Your makeup alone is a half-hour process. Yes, makeup. Thick black kohl around your eyes, supposedly to ward off evil spirits and reduce sun glare. It also gets into your tear ducts, stings like betrayal, and runs down your cheeks if you blink too hard. But you must endure, because a pharaoh with smeared eyeliner sends the wrong message. You remember once asking if you could skip the cosmetics. Your stylist looked at you like you'd insulted Hathor herself. "Majesty," she whispered, "without the kohl, your soul is vulnerable to chaos." You nodded. You cried later, carefully, into a linen cloth so as not to smudge. Some of your outfits feature leopard skin. Not imitation. Actual leopard. Sewn into ceremonial sashes worn over one shoulder, a sign of strength and divine conquest. It's itchy. It smells weird. It sheds. But it's tradition, and no one questions tradition. Except your neck, which questions it constantly. You're also required to carry items, a crook and a flail, symbols of kingship and power. They look majestic in stone carvings, but they're incredibly awkward in real life. You try to pose with them gracefully, but end up poking your own leg. Once, you dropped the flail during a New Year's rite. It clattered on the tiles like an insult to the ancestors. A priest nearly fainted. Worse still is the ceremonial beard. You're barely sprouting a few royal hairs of your own, but they strap a fake one under your chin. It's braided, stiff, and tickles your nose when you breathe. But without it, you're just a teenager with eyeliner. With it, you're Pharaoh, the eternal God King, suffering from mild facial irritation. You once tried to rebel by asking for a linen tunic like the workers wear. Your fashion attendant clutched her chest and muttered prayers to Ta. You were given a lecture about how common fabrics would weaken the divine current. You went back to gold-threaded linen, resigned to your fate. The climate doesn't help. Upper Egypt is essentially an oven. The desert sun reflects off the palace walls like you're inside a giant alabaster frying pan. Every bead of sweat threatens to ruin the exact placement of your collar. You are forbidden to dab your face in public. That is the job of a designated perspiration servant, who must wait for a secret signal. You blink twice. He approaches. Miss the blink, and you're dripping in divinity. There's no casual wear. No royal pajamas. Even your sleepwear is embroidered with stars and sacred animals. One night, you tried removing your arm cuffs to sleep more comfortably. By morning, a servant had sewn them back on. Your ka may wander at night, Majesty. It must know who it is. You often fantasize about being a simple farmer, barefoot in the soil, shirtless under the stars. Then you remember farmers don't get honeyed figs or alabaster bathtubs. You sigh, deeply. Inwardly, even hairstyles aren't free from expectations. You're not allowed to grow your hair naturally. It must be shaved or covered by elaborate wigs. Wigs made from woven human hair. Sometimes from distant Nubian provinces, braided into perfect coils. They're hot. They're heavy. They itch. But they make you look otherworldly, which is the entire point. You once tried to loosen one for airflow. The royal stylist gasped so loudly you thought he saw a ghost. The symmetry, Majesty. You'll unbalance the heavens. You apologize to the wig. And don't forget fragrance. Your body must always smell divine. You're rubbed with oils made from crushed lilies, cinnamon bark, myrrh, and occasionally something called sacred musk, which you suspect is just old goat. Too much and you feel like a bakery. too little and someone whispers, the god's aura is weakening. There's no winning. During the annual said festival, a major royal jubilee, you must perform a sacred sprint in full regalia. The theory is to prove you're still fit to rule. The reality is you jog half-heartedly while servants cheer awkwardly. You pant. You wheeze. Your headdress slips. But they declare, His Majesty runs swifter than the falcon of Horus. You want to die. Instead, you smile, even your funerary fashion is prepared in advance. Somewhere in the palace, they're already weaving your burial shroud with gold thread and stitching symbols meant to guide your soul through the underworld. It will be itchy for eternity. How comforting. You sometimes wonder if you took it all off just once, what would happen? If you stepped into the sunlight in a plain tunic, without gold, without eyeliner, without the scent of 10 different sacred flowers, would anyone recognize you? Probably not. And that's the point. You're not allowed to look human. You must always look eternal. Even if your back hurts, your sandals chafe, and your eyebrows are stuck in a permanent expression of divine wisdom that mostly just feels like exhaustion. So you sigh, straighten your collar, and lift your chin. The people are waiting. And your wig's crooked again. The banquet tonight is grand peacocks on platters, dancers with cymbals, wine in amethyst goblets, but you barely touch your food. Because you know better. You've learned, through whispered warnings and one unfortunate incident involving a fig and a vomiting scribe, that every meal as Pharaoh is an exercise in polite paranoia. You stare down at your plate, spiced goose, honey-glazed locusts, a pyramid of pomegranates, all arranged to look like miniature offerings to the gods. It's beautiful. It's probably deadly. Your official taster approaches. A tall, silent man with the permanent expression of someone who just bit into something slightly off. He samples the goose, chews slowly, and waits. Everyone else watches him chew, as if his digestion will determine the fate of the entire banquet. 30 seconds pass. He nods. You are allowed to eat, but your appetite is gone. Because somewhere in this room between the flickering torchlight and the harp music someone might be trying to kill you. It's not personal. It's traditional. Poison is the noble's weapon. Silent, elegant, untraceable. Everyone knows it. You've read enough papyri to know that most pharaohs didn't die on the battlefield. They died at dinner. One sip of the wrong wine. One bite of tainted dates. A single grain of lotus dust slipped into their barley stew. Historians still debate whether the Egyptian royal court was truly riddled with poison plots, or whether later records exaggerated the danger. All you know is, every time your cook sneezes, 3 priests gather for a cleansing ritual. You once asked if you could cook for yourself, just once. Your advisor fainted on the spot. Majesty, he wheezed upon waking, touching raw onions would profane your sacred aura. You're not allowed to pick fruit. You're not allowed to taste raw flour. You're not even allowed to hold a knife unless it's ceremonial and blessed. The one time you tried to spread honey on bread, a servant lunged forward as if you were about to ignite the kingdom, and yet, the food is incredible. That's the irony. Rich lamb soaked in garlic and cumin. Sweet beer brewed with dates and fig pulp. Flatbread dusted with coriander. If it weren't for the constant threat of death, you'd eat like a minor deity. Meals are performances. You sit at an elevated table, under a canopy painted with stars, while musicians play soft flutes. Courtiers whisper praises. A concubine offers you a chilled grape from a golden bowl. You thank her with a glance. You do not eat the grape. You've heard stories of poisons that mimic illness. Nightshade blended with pomegranate. Hemlock laced into fish sauce. A certain mushroom that causes pleasant dreams and permanent ones. So you nod politely, wave off second servings, and let your taster earn his salary. Even drinks are suspect. Wine, though common among the elite, is the easiest thing to tamper with. You remember a noble once gifting you a rare vintage from the western oases. It came sealed with wax, decorated with lotus petals, and accompanied by a long poem. The priest of Sekhmet sniffed it and ordered it burned. You sipped beer instead. From a clay mug. Brewed in your own palace. Still, you waited half an hour to see if your taster's pupils dilated. They didn't. That was a good day. Then there are the rituals before meals. Incense burned in a circle to purify the room. Spells whispered into the pitcher of water. A bronze mirror turned face down under the table to deflect curses. You never fully understand these customs, but you follow them with devotion. Because you like living. And then there's the bread. Simple. Ubiquitous. Delicious when fresh, dangerous when not. Sometimes it's sweetened with honey and carob, shaped like animals or moons. But it's also an excellent carrier for powdered poisons. You chew each bite slowly, listening to your body with suspicious attention. Did your tongue just tingle? Or is that the usual anxiety? You once heard a rumor that a foreign princess tried to smuggle in cursed olives. You asked to see them. No one ever found them. But you still flinch when someone mentions olives. Most tragic of all, your favorite dish is lentil stew with coriander and crushed garlic. Humble. Comforting. But now, every bowl is triple tested. Boiled under supervision. Blessed by two gods. Served in a new vessel each time. It no longer tastes the same. One night, you dream you're a farmer, roasting onions over a fire, dipping flatbread into oil without a care in the world. You wake up salivating and immediately suspicious that someone put something in your pillow. Even sweets are suspect. Honey cakes shaped like lotus flowers. Date rolls stuffed with fig paste. Delicious, yes. Safe. Not guaranteed. You once caught your cousin eyeing your dessert with too much interest. You fed it to a dog. The dog lived. The cousin looked disappointed. At festivals, guests offer you food as a sign of loyalty. Refusing can be seen as an insult. Accepting could be fatal. So you pretend. You lift the dish, smile, declare it divine, then set it down for later. Your food taster knows to collect it and dispose of it quietly. You keep thinking, if someone does succeed, will you know? Will it be fast? Will you feel it in your chest, or will the room just dim gently? You hope. When the time comes, it's at least quiet. Until then, you chew slowly. You sip carefully. You smile often. You don't trust anyone who says, "This won't kill you." They always say it too quickly, and somewhere, deep down, you envy the peasants who eat onions and radishes straight from the dirt, laughing with garlic on their breath, never once fearing the fig. Your throat is sore. Again. But you don't dare cough during morning ritual. It might be seen as a bad omen. You press your tongue against the roof of your mouth, swallow silently, and pretend the incense isn't making your sinuses ache. Because today is not the day to see mortal. Unfortunately, your body has other plans. You've woken up with a headache, a stomach like bubbling porridge, and knees that feel like they've traded their cartilage for papyrus. You suspect a fever, or perhaps the wrath of Sekhmet, goddess of plagues. Either way, your royal physicians are summoned, and with them, a parade of ointments, oils, and the occasional live insect. First, they bring the crocodile fat. It's applied liberally to your forehead, mixed with crushed herbs and a chant about divine cleansing. The smell is somewhere between stagnant river and regret. The fat is followed by honey raw and sticky smeared along your collarbone and temples, said to draw out the sickness. It mostly draws flies. You ask if you can lie down. They say no. The ceremony of the morning sun greeting must proceed. A servant dabs your sweat with linen. You murmur the verses through clenched teeth. Later, you're finally allowed to rest. You're placed on a cool slab of alabaster, and the physician returns, this time with a clay jar full of leeches. You close your eyes. You know what's coming. Historians still debate how effective ancient Egyptian medicine truly was. Some claim it was surprisingly advanced for its time. Others say it was elaborate guesswork performed in poetic couplets. You lean toward the latter. Especially when they try to cure your indigestion with powdered hippopotamus teeth. You remember once having a sore throat during the flood season. The temple priest prescribed a potion made of boiled lizard tail, fermented dates, and onion. You drank it. You vomited. You drank it again because refusing was impious. There's a scroll titled Scroll of the Ailing Pharaoh, which outlines every known ailment and its spiritual counterpart. According to it, your headache is caused by unbalanced thoughts, and your stomach pain. Impure vapor in the gut. The remedy, more honey. With garlic. And a beetle. Beetles are important. Scarabs, specifically. Symbol of the rising sun. Also, apparently, a cure for back pain if crushed and mixed with goose grease. You apply the paste and lie very still, wondering how something so small can smell so cursed. Some treatments are less revolting, but more confusing. A priest once stood above you for 2 hours reciting verses to Heka, the god of magic, while holding a dried lotus in one hand and a live duck in the other. You asked why. He said, balance. The duck disagreed. Other days, it's enemas. A very popular treatment in ancient Egypt. Administered with a long reed, a sheep's bladder, and no warning. They claim it clears the channels of divine flow. You claim it ruins your morning. You ask for something simple like water. But the water is blessed, strained through linen, then stirred counterclockwise with a reed that has been dipped in temple oil. By the time it reaches your lips, it tastes like a sacred bog. You drink it anyway. Just in case it helps, there's one physician who insists your dreams hold the key. He makes you recount them every morning and interprets them based on which bird you saw and how many teeth fell out. One time you dreamt of drowning in barley. He said it meant your humors were out of balance and prescribed a bath in warm beer. You did not feel better. But you did smell like a tavern. Sometimes, you wonder how the peasants treat illness. Probably mud and rest. Maybe chewing on reeds. Probably just sleeping. You envy that. Instead, you're surrounded by ointments, rituals, and the constant clatter of bronze tools being sterilized with fire and prayer. And every now and then, you get genuinely sick. A fever so strong you can barely speak. The palace goes quiet. Priests hover. Advisors start talking to each other in cautious tones. Contingency plans are reviewed. You lie still, staring at the painted ceiling, wondering if your successor is already being fitted for sandals. Then, miraculously, you recover. They credit the sacred spell, the new amulet, or the blessed lotus fumes. You credit time and hydration. Either way, you're paraded through the temple in thanks. You must walk barefoot over hot stones as a symbol of triumph. You're still feverish, but no one notices. Or they do, and they prefer not to speak of it, even when you're healthy. You're always being pre-treated. Your food is laced with preventative herbs. Your bathwater contains energizing minerals. Your bed sheets are sprinkled with powdered papyrus ash to ward off nightmares. It makes them scratchy, and sleep. Forget it. You're constantly interrupted by dream interpreters, spirit chasers, and the occasional terrified servant who claims to have seen your soul, hovering near the ceiling. The worst part. You're never allowed to act sick. You must appear strong, radiant, eternal. If you limp, it's a test. If you shiver, it's divine resonance. If you sneeze, it's a sign from Thoth, so you cough into linen. You smile through nausea. You wave your hand dismissively when someone asks if you're tired. And at night, when the fever comes creeping back, you stare at the ceiling again, counting painted stars and wondering how many other pharaohs died in silence, afraid to admit they were just human. It begins as a dream, an enormous mountain of limestone, a winding ramp spiraling upward, thousands of figures moving in unison beneath a blazing sun. But you're not dreaming. You're wide awake, squinting at the horizon as your overseers explain the details of your tomb construction, which, awkwardly, must begin while you're still very much alive, because that's how it works when you're pharaoh. The moment you're crowned, the countdown begins not just to your death, but to your monument. A resting place so lavish, so eternal, that future generations will marvel at it and, ideally, remember your name correctly. Spoiler, they won't. Today, you inspect the quarry where your pyramid stones are being cut. The workers, stripped to linen loincloths, haul and shape the massive blocks under the supervision of stern architects. One of them bows too quickly and drops his copper chisel. You pretend not to notice. He pretends not to exist. You're handed a ceremonial hammer. You must bless the construction by tapping the cornerstone 3 times while reciting the names of your ancestors. Your arm shakes slightly. The crowd cheers anyway. Historians still debate whether pharaohs personally oversaw pyramid construction or merely received regular updates while reclining beneath embroidered canopies. In your case, it's both. You make a public appearance once a season, smile for the wall paintings. Then leave everything in the hands of your viziers, but the project is always there looming. A private obsession. A public burden. The tomb must be perfect. Not just spacious, but astronomically aligned, mythologically accurate, and thief-proof. You visit the design hall one evening to find 2 priests arguing about whether the burial chamber should point toward Orion or Sirius. You quietly back away. They say your pyramid will take decades. Thousands of workers, artisans, priests, and astronomers will dedicate their lives to it. Not out of love. Out of law. Out of tradition. Out of fear. Your architect presents the blueprint, a multi-chambered structure with corridors, false doors, hidden shafts, and a labyrinth of booby traps designed to confuse tomb robbers. You nod. You ask for more statues of yourself. Majesty, he says gently, we already have 132 planned. You nod again. Make it 133, you're encouraged to select your funerary texts early. There are scrolls to choose from, the pyramid texts, the coffin texts, the newer Book of the Dead. Each one includes spells, instructions, and spiritual hacks to get your soul past the 42 judges of the underworld. You skim through one and find a spell that begins, I have not killed. I have not stolen. You wonder if lying in the afterlife is punished or just expected. There's also your sarcophagus. It must be carved from solid stone, heavy enough to resist grave robbers, yet delicate enough to bear inscriptions in precise hieroglyphs. You choose basalt. It's dark, dramatic, and impossible to scratch. Like your public image, next, the grave goods. Jewelry, pottery, food, miniature furniture, makeup palettes. Everything you'll need in the afterlife. Including hundreds of Shabta's tiny servant statues meant to perform your duties in eternity. You're shown a lineup of them, each with a different facial expression. You pick the ones that look most terrified. Just in case the afterlife is unionized. And of course, the treasure. Gold, lapis, turquoise, obsidian, bronze daggers, ceremonial wigs, ornate chests, and figurines of gods doing very specific things with lotuses. You're told to include only what you need. You insist on including a full set of dinnerware and an extra headrest. Your sleep posture is particular. But nothing stresses you out more than the wall carvings. These are your story. Your legacy. Your version of eternity. You must decide how to depict your reign, what battles to glorify, which gods to flatter, and which relatives to mysteriously leave out. You pose for bas-reliefs, holding conquered foes by the hair with one hand, a mace in the other. You've never done this in real life. But art is metaphor. And you look great in profile. You're also asked to compose your final declaration. A royal epitaph to be inscribed above the burial chamber. You think hard. May the gods embrace me, the land remember me, and my enemies weep dust. Sounds nice. You add it to the scroll, then comes the labor question. Your officials assure you the workers are volunteers. Majesty, they serve with joy during the flood season. You glance at a builder with sunburned shoulders and cracked hands. He does not look joyful. You ask if they are compensated. With bread and beer, they reply. You nod, then double their beer rations. There's the matter of your internal organs. Yes, even your guts are planned for. You must choose your canopic jars vessels to hold your liver, lungs, stomach, and intestines. Each one topped with the head of a protective deity. You're offered a new design shaped like falcons. You find them unsettling. You stick with the traditional baboon-headed jar for intestines. It's familiar. You realize, at some point, that you're spending more time preparing for death than living. You tell this to your advisor. He smiles. That is the way of kings, Majesty. You build for what endures. You wonder if that includes your lower back pain. Sometimes, you sneak away to the construction site and just watch. No one sees you. You stand behind a curtain, gaze at the rising structure block by block, story by story, and feel something like pride. Or dread. Or both. You once overheard two workers joking about how they'd be long dead before your tomb is finished. You laughed. Quietly. Because it's true, you pass a cart full of limestone dust and remember how it clings to everything. You're still finding it in your sandals weeks later. Eternity, it seems, is gritty. At night, you dream of your own burial. Not with fear, exactly, but a resigned curiosity. Will they get the carvings right? Will the amulets be properly aligned? Will your heart be judged light as a feather? Or will it sink like regret, and when you wake, there's a new delivery, another chisel sketch, another statue to approve, another incantation to sign? You nod. You add it to the plan, because whether you like it or not, your tomb is your final job, and unlike your pyramid, you won't be around to see if it's built right. You stand on the balcony, wind rippling your ceremonial robe, gazing out across your golden city temples, granaries, distant obelisks pointing skyward like silent exclamations. From here, it all looks serene. Eternal. But you know better. Somewhere out there, someone is sharpening a metaphorical dagger. Probably a literal one too, because everyone wants your throne. Everyone. The generals. The priests. The scribes. Your own cousins. Even the high-ranking lady who once complimented your sandals with too much enthusiasm. Rule long enough, and you learn to hear danger and flattery. The threat doesn't always come from across the river. Often, it comes from across your bedchamber. Your harem is a swirling storm of politics, perfume, and potential assassination. Dozens of women official wives, unofficial favorites, diplomatic gifts all vying for influence, all monitored by an entire ministry of eunuchs and gossip-mongers. Some of them genuinely like you. Some of them pretend to. All of them are ambitious, and why wouldn't they be? One heir, just one child could change everything. One royal son means a new queen mother, elevated status, protection for her family, more gold than the average temple, and the right to command respect from even the vizier. Stakes this high rarely inspire good behavior. Historians still argue whether the Egyptian harem was a place of quiet beauty or boiling tension. From your experience, it's a little of both. You've walked into rooms so heavy with incense and rivalry you could slice the air with a bronze mirror. One concubine gifts you an amulet shaped like the Eye of Horus. It's lovely. You place it on your table. That night, your head aches. The priests blame atmospheric spirits. You blame the amulet. It's buried the next morning. Deeply. A wife once serenaded you with a harp. Her voice was sweet. Her timing suspicious. 2 days later, her brother was promoted to oversee royal wine shipments. Coincidence? Perhaps. But you drink only beer for a month, you try to maintain order. You institute a rotating schedule for evening visits. You forbid private gifts. You insist all poetry be submitted for review. It helps. Marginally, but even outside the harem, betrayal waits like a crocodile beneath still water. The high priest of Ta suddenly begins referencing old omens portents that suggest the strength of the falcon must be tested. A general from the eastern garrison sends a letter filled with compliments and oddly detailed troop positions. Your favorite vizier coughs during a war council and someone in the corner flinches. You remember the story of your great-uncle, smothered with a linen cloth in his sleep. The murder was blamed on a palace servant, who mysteriously vanished during questioning. You don't sleep without a dagger under your pillow anymore, even architecture becomes suspicious. You notice a new hallway where there wasn't one before. A servant swears it's always been there. You order it sealed anyway. The next morning, 2 rats lie dead in front of your chamber door, an omen, according to one priest. 2 deaths avoided, he whispers. You do not ask whose, you start reading people like omens. A faltered bow. Rebellion. A downcast gaze. Guilt. A servant who suddenly changes perfumes. Treason, probably, your own guards are rotated constantly. You never keep the same ones longer than a week. They're tested with trivial tasks, timing their response to fake emergencies, asking them to recite ancient oaths on command. You pretend it's a loyalty drill. You don't mention the failed attempt to poison you 2 years ago. And the worst part? The loneliness. Because the higher you rise, the more careful you must be with affection. True loyalty is a myth like crocodiles that cry or sacred cats that never scratch. Even your own children are threats. One son is sharp, clever, and unervingly patient. He watches you during ceremonies. Not admiringly. Strategically. Another son is popular with the guards. He throws festivals in your name. You never authorize them, you try to bond with your eldest by giving him a falcon, thinking the symbolism might soften his ambition. He names the bird Majesty. You're not sure if it's a compliment or a prediction. Your advisors suggest appointing a co-regent, someone to learn the duties of rule in your shadow. You smile and nod. But in your heart, you know, the minute you name a successor, your days are numbered. So you stay vague. You praise everyone equally. You reward loyalty with small gestures, never too much. You keep secrets. You lock scrolls in triple boxes. You whisper commands behind fans. You learn to speak in riddles. Let the Nile decide. Ma'at will balance the scales. The stars are unclear. Everyone nods. No one knows what you mean. You once dreamt of retiring. Not really retiring, just retreating. Living in a quiet estate in the delta, tending lotus ponds, writing poetry. But pharaohs don't retire. They just get replaced. Sometimes with a knife. Sometimes with a whispered prayer and a night that never ends. You think of exile just disappearing down the Nile. Changing your name. Growing your hair out. But your face is everywhere. Painted, carved, sculpted. You're literally part of the skyline. There's no escape from your own image, and so you endure. You sit straight in your gilded chair, offering blessings to the people who secretly wish you gone. You sip your inspected wine. You nod at your ambitious son. You visit the harem and smile at the women who may be deciding your fate even now. because that's the deal, you are divine. You are adored, and everyone wants you dead. The clouds don't roll in. The Nile does, not clouds in the sky, no, those rarely grace your kingdom. But the river? It decides everything. Every harvest. Every feast. Every famine. You're Pharaoh, ruler of the two lands, but the Nile is the true master. It swells and recedes with no regard for politics, ceremony, or your latest monument in progress. You wake one morning to the scent of wet earth and the distant hum of celebration. The Nile has begun its annual flood. Priests run calculations. Farmers offer dates to the riverbank. You, meanwhile, are summoned for the ceremonial watching of the waters, where you sit beneath a striped canopy and pretend to enjoy the smell of moldy reeds. Your face must remain serene, even as you sweat under a 30-pound collar. You raise your hand, the people cheer, and the high priest announces, the waters rise in perfect harmony with the king's breath. You hold that breath for 3 more seconds and try not to roll your eyes. Historians still argue over how accurately ancient Egyptians could predict flood patterns. Some believe the priests used detailed astronomical tools. Others think it was just educated guessing with a side of fish guts. Either way, you're the one who gets blamed when the waters are too high. Or not high enough, this year. The Nile is moody. At first, the waters seem generous. Canals fill, fish leap, and grain stores brim with cautious optimism. Then it keeps rising. And rising. By the 3rd week, entire fields vanish beneath murky water. Villagers drag goats to higher ground. Crops rot before they sprout. You're advised to issue a public statement. You write, the gods test us to remind us of balance. We endure. We rise. It's carved into limestone. By morning, someone adds graffiti beneath it, we drown. You laugh. Quietly. Then triple the guard near the granaries. Later, when the waters recede, they leave behind a film of silt and disappointment. The wheat harvest comes in thin. The onions are bitter. The peasants grumble, which is normal, but now they do it louder. The priests organize a purification festival. You're asked to dance. Yes, dance. On a platform shaped like the Nile Delta. You agree, but only after confirming there will be ropes to hold onto. Then comes the real disaster. The flood didn't reach the southern fields. There's drought in Thebes and swamps in Memphis. Either way, people are hungry. You open the royal reserves just a little. Enough to look generous, not desperate, and then famine arrives. You see it first in the market vendors with empty baskets. Then in the temple's offerings, smaller, fewer, dried instead of fresh. Then in your own palace. The honey cakes are thinner. The beer is bitter. The attendants bow more deeply, hoping their hunger hides behind ritual, but it's the statues that get you. The statues of you once covered in offerings now sit alone. Sometimes, you see peasants laying bread at the feet of a rival god. Sometimes, a cow. You try not to take it personally. Your advisors meet in the marble chamber. The treasurer weeps over grain tallies. The general wants to raid Nubia for food. The high priest blames a missed offering to Happy, the river god. You remain silent, sipping weak tea, hoping your quiet looks like wisdom. Finally, a bold merchant suggests something unthinkable: raise taxes on temple lands. You almost choke on your tea. The priest drops his cup. The guards stare. You dismiss the merchant and send him to inspect canal damage far away. That night, you dream of the Nile refusing to flow at all. You see cracked riverbeds and children eating boiled reeds. You wake drenched in sweat, though the air is cool. Then, one morning, the river surprises everyone. It rises. Not too much. Just enough. It creeps into the canals with a calm grace. Fish return. Egrets strut along the banks. Farmers begin to sing again. You attend the festival of the returning flood and bless a jar of river water with a gold ladle. Someone faints from joy. Or heat, you declare a week of celebration. Bread returns to the markets. The beer improves. The graffiti disappears. You pose for a mural depicting you as the bringer of life. The high priest paints your face himself. It's slightly crooked. You say nothing, but the lesson remains: no matter how many titles you have, no matter how many statues bear your face, the Nile does not listen to kings. It listens to itself. And you listen to the Nile. Every year, the cycle repeats. Hope, flood, feast, fear. Sometimes you're the savior. Sometimes, the scapegoat. You get used to it. You attend a village festival, just for show. A child hands you a wilted lotus. You accept it. You think of all the times you've cursed the river, and all the times you've blessed it. In a quiet moment, you whisper to the water, "Let me last one more year." The current answers in silence. Your attendants hover nervously as you shift on the throne, stomach groaning like a trapped demon. You wave them away, trying to appear serene. But it's no use. The feast from last night, a festival in your honor, complete with grilled goose, honeyed lentils, and something suspiciously crunchy in the fig paste, has launched a full rebellion in your gut. Pharaoh or not, you are very much human. You try to ignore the cramps, focus on the high priest's monologue about temple renovations. But the words blur, drowned out by the dull roar in your intestines. The divine image of eternal order is about to be interrupted by digestive disorder. You excuse yourself. Once inside the privacy of your royal lavatory, a quiet, shadowy chamber lined with alabaster and eucalyptus, you finally let go of the facade. The stone seat is cold. The incense does nothing. You place your head in your hands and mutter a prayer to anyone who will listen, even minor gods you've never spoken to before. Please, Nebet, head of the healing waters, make it stop. Historians still argue whether pharaohs suffered from chronic digestive issues due to rich diets, stress, or the overuse of sweet beer and onions. But if you're living it, there's no debate. Your insides are a battlefield. And the generals are barley, garlic, and a suspicious fig tart. One of your physicians insists it's divine imbalance. Another suggests an enema with ox milk and powdered date stone. You opt for peppermint leaves and silence. You are not about to make national headlines for an ox milk enema. They offer incantations, 2 chants meant to settle the spirit of the stomach. You sit there, hands on knees, while a priest sways beside you, murmuring something about the crocodile in the belly. You try not to laugh. That just makes it worse. Your royal diet is a problem. It's decadent, yes, but also dangerous. Meals are heavy on starch, low on balance. Bread is everywhere: dense loaves, honeyed rolls, ceremonial crescents. Your teeth are ground down from sand particles in the grain, and your gut is constantly processing enough yeast to start a small brewery. Then there's the meat. Roasted duck, salted fish, beef boiled in wine, goat kidneys baked with coriander. Rich. Rare. Resplendent. But hard to digest. Especially when you eat with one eye on your food taster and the other on the astronomer whispering about retrograde eclipses, and don't even get started on dates. Delicious, yes. But sticky, fermenting, and absolutely unforgiving in large quantities. You once ate 10 during a harvest blessing. You regretted them for 3 days. Your attendants bring a cushion for your back. One brings a vial of soothing oil. Another lights a cone of myrrh. You wave them all off. You just want 5 minutes of privacy to handle the most humbling experience in a pharaoh's day. You reflect on your ancestors. Carved into temple walls, shown as warriors, gods, shepherds of the people. Not one of them ever depicted clutching their stomach or waddling away from court with a wince. Yet here you are. The living Horus, waging war against heartburn, you think of your tomb. All the statues of you stern, majestic, arms crossed. Will anyone ever sculpt you mid-cramp? No. Of course not. But maybe they should. There's even a myth about a pharaoh who ate a sacred lotus and suffered wrathful wind for 7 days. You used to laugh at that tale. Now you wonder if it was a metaphor. Or just honest reporting. Your physician returns with a new potion. It smells like boiled leeks and despair. You drink it. Your stomach protests. He tells you to walk in slow circles. Majesty, he says, it will align your inner river. You give him a look. He doesn't blink. Meanwhile, courtiers wait just outside the chamber, pretending they're not listening for groans or gurgles. News of your condition will spread. Someone will whisper it into a temple. A minor cult might even interpret it as a cosmic sign. The pharaoh trembles, the earth must shift. No, the pharaoh had too many lentils, and yet, you endure. Because that's the job. You can't collapse. You can't cancel ceremonies. The gods require appearances. So you straighten up, rinse your face with rosewater, and re-emerge with all the dignity of a man who absolutely did not just spend 30 minutes arguing with his digestive tract. Back on the throne, you nod as scribes resume reading complaints from border provinces. You raise an eyebrow at a tax debate. You point vaguely at a map. You try not to clench. A servant offers you pomegranate juice. You decline. You are not that brave. You gaze out across your court, smiling faintly. They see a god. They see a symbol of eternal balance. They do not see the man currently praying that his lunch stays where it belongs. Sometimes, late at night, you lie on your polished stone bed, head resting on a wooden pillow, and you laugh to yourself. Quietly. Carefully. Because laughter shakes the belly, and your belly is fragile. Being divine, as it turns out, doesn't protect you from indigestion. You're 37 years old, or maybe 38. No one can quite agree on your exact birth date, since royal calendars are more concerned with flood cycles and lunar festivals than with birthdays. Still, one thing is clear, you're not young anymore, and there is no such thing as retirement for a god king. You lean against the carved column of your balcony, gazing toward the west, the land of the dead, where the sun sets and the tombs wait. It's quiet. Too quiet. The kind of silence that reminds you that even in immortality, there's a finish line. You used to believe you'd rule forever. Now your knees creak. You forget minor deities' names. You squint at scrolls that used to be clear. And while no one dares say it out loud, the court has started preparing for your transition. You can tell by the sudden increase in funerary planning meetings, the uptick in lotus flower deliveries, and the suspicious number of dream interpreters offering reassuring messages about the afterlife. You begin to wonder, in the still moments, what death actually means when you're already divine. Technically, you don't die. You return to Ra. You reunite with the eternal Ka. You ascend beyond the bounds of flesh. But flesh, as it turns out, hurts when it's tired. Flesh still stubs its toes. Flesh coughs. Flesh itches. Historians still argue whether the concept of divine pharaohs was truly believed by all or simply promoted to keep order. You've stopped wondering. You've played the role for so long that even your own reflection in the obsidian mirror has forgotten how to look mortal. What you do know is that you can't just disappear. The people expect signs. The temples require rituals. The priests are preparing scrolls. Your tomb must be sealed in alignment with the constellation Orion. You must be mummified for 70 days with natron, linen, and expensive oils, most of which smell like furniture polish. One morning, you wake with chest pain. It passes quickly. No one is told. But that night, you dictate your final revisions to your burial texts, just in case. You replace one spell that mentioned terrifying vengeance upon enemies with something gentler. Maybe forgiveness is more dignified. A scribe brings you new titles to consider: the Radiant of Two Horizons, he who walks among stars, beloved of Batet. You nod politely. You wonder if any of them will last past 3 dynasties. Most likely, someone will chisel your name off a wall and claim your pyramid for themselves. It's a tradition, after all. You visit your tomb in progress for what might be the last time. The workers have done well. The chambers are painted, the trapdoors installed, the sarcophagus polished. The walls shimmer with gold leaf depictions of you offering bread to gods who never blink. You point to a carving where your nose looks too big. The artisan promises to fix it. You nod. You're too tired to care. Your sons visit. One offers you a lotus blossom. Another presents a small statue of Horus. The youngest just stares at you, unsure whether to bow or cry. You reach out to him and he flinches. You realize you don't know his voice. You try to teach them what matters: diplomacy, grace, endurance. But they want to talk about armies, horses, and treasure. You try again. You fail again. They are too young to listen. Or perhaps you are too old to be heard. At night, the palace is quieter. The drums have stopped. The court has gone to bed. You sit by the reflecting pool and watch a frog hop across the stones. You used to chase frogs as a boy. No titles. No eyeliner. Just bare feet and laughter. You almost smile, then you cough. Deep. Wet. You wipe your mouth and see a trace of red. The physicians are summoned. They whisper in the hallway. One brings warm beer laced with herbs. Another suggests a purification spell. A third simply bows and avoids your gaze. You wave them away. You know, you write a final decree, a modest festival in your name, but no human sacrifices. You've always found those distasteful. You add a note to increase beer rations for the workers who built your tomb. You sign it. Your hand trembles. You lie down on your ceremonial bed, the one carved with stars and jackals. You close your eyes and feel the linen sheets beneath your palms soft, cool, endlessly smooth. Someone plays the sistrum in the distance. A soft, metallic rattle. You think of the Nile. You think of bread, and figs, and the first goat you ever petted. You think of the ibis that stole your writing brush during lessons. You think of all the names you've been called, and all the names you will be forgotten by, and then you sleep, because there is no retirement for a pharaoh, only rest. The process begins before your body has cooled. The royal physicians step back. Their task is over. In their place, the priests move forward, bringing with them scrolls, chants, and linen stretched longer than memory. There is no mourning in their eyes. No hesitation in their movements. You are no longer a ruler. You have become a ritual. The chamber fills with murmured prayers and the bitter scent of juniper. Oil lamps flicker against polished walls, casting shifting shadows across carved gods and painted myths. Your body is lifted with care, as though it might shatter. Hands move with the reverence given only to statues or sacred vessels. You are both now. Something once alive. Something now preserved. Somewhere nearby, your sons cry. Or perhaps they do not. It matters little. They are not allowed to be here. Not for this. This stage is the domain of the priests, and the embalmers, and the silence between their movements. Knives are drawn, and the work begins. A temple scribe stands nearby, recording every step. The heart is removed first, wrapped and stored inside a jar carved with divine protection. The brain is drawn out through the nostrils, discarded with little ceremony. Too messy, a priest mutters. Too mortal. The lungs, liver, and intestines are anointed and sealed within canopic jars, each guarded by solemn-faced deities with heads of falcons. jackals, and baboons. They watch, unblinking. You are bathed in palm wine. Then again in Nile water. Then again in wine. Your body is rinsed until no trace of life remains. A cloth soaked in myrrh is passed through your lips. This is the ritual of the opening of the mouth. It grants your soul the power to eat, to speak, to breathe in the world beyond death. Historians today still debate the mummification timeline. Whether 70 days were followed precisely or adjusted for politics and cost. But in your case, everything is done as prescribed. Every hour. Every utterance. Every binding. Your skin is coated in resin, then rubbed with fragrant oils and sacred pastes made from lotus and cedar, from herbs crushed and mixed until the room smells of incense and tar. The wrappings begin with your fingers. Each one is bound alone, wrapped like its own prayer. Then your hands. Your arms. Your torso. Your legs. Linen strips, soaked in resin, are drawn tight. Between the layers, they tuck small charms, scarabs, ankhs, protective eyes, gold birds. Symbols meant to ward off danger in the realms beyond. Your head is wrapped last, you are gone. But your image, your shape, remains. Once the wrapping is complete, your mummy is dressed in splendor. A golden mask is fitted over your face. It is smooth, idealized, perfected in every line. A face not quite yours, but truer than the one you were born with. It fits with ceremonial finality. It always does. Then comes the procession. The coffin is massive, lacquered black and trimmed with gold. It rests on a sled, drawn forward by oxen and surrounded by priests. Wailers line the path. Women cry aloud in rhythm, tearing their clothes. Men throw sand into their hair. The streets fill with people. Some weep. Some cheer. Some chew dates and whisper as you pass. The cortege moves westward. Toward the land of setting sun. Toward your tomb has been waiting. Built stone by stone for decades. The outer walls celebrate your victories. Some real, some imagined. Inside, the painted chambers tell of your journey through the Duat. You will face beasts. Pass through gates. Speak passwords. And stand before the scale that weighs your heart. You hope the correct spells were included. You meant to check. You never did. The burial chamber is cool and still. The walls echo with torchlight. Priests chant final blessings. Your sarcophagus is lowered with care, sliding into place with a deep sound that settles like thunder wrapped in cloth. Offerings are arranged around you. Beer, loaves of bread, baskets of fruit. Garments and sandals. Flasks of perfume. Models of boats, small wooden figures of servants, a painted lute. A carved replica of your palace, tiny windows inlaid with ivory. Your entire life, replicated in miniature, sealed beside you forever. The doors close, stone is rolled into place. The seal is pressed into clay. Divine warnings are carved across the lintels in sacred script. The workers finish their tasks in silence. Then they leave. Your tomb falls quiet. Outside, life begins again. A new pharaoh is named. Your face is pressed into coins. Your name is spoken in festivals. Your death becomes legend, and far in the future, perhaps, a group of strangers will force open your resting place. They will carry torches, or flashlights. Their eyes will be bright with excitement and fear. They will marvel at your treasures. They will photograph your mask. They will admire your gold. They will not feel the linen itching against your dried skin. They will not hear the echo of the last breath you never took. They will not know how heavy all of it once was, because pharaohs are not buried and forgotten. Pharaohs do not rest, pharaohs become artifacts. It starts with a creak. A faint sound, delicate and almost respectful, as the stone door shifts for the first time in centuries. Dust drifts into the torchlight, dancing like tiny spirits stirred from sleep. A breath of stale air escapes, thick with incense and the slow decay of time. You do not know it is happening. You cannot. Your senses have long since faded. What remains of you lies wrapped in brittle linen, sealed beneath a golden mask that now flakes at the edges. Your tomb, once closed with solemn prayers, is opened by strangers with eager hands and quiet voices, tomb robbers. Again, they are not the first, and they will not be the last. The ancients came with chisels and hunger. These arrive with maps, scanners, and cameras. They call themselves archaeologists, explorers, maybe even guardians of history. But they are here to take. Not to understand. The chamber glows in flickering light. Figurines. Painted jars. Amulets. Everything you prepared for the afterlife, now handled with gloved curiosity. One touches a statue of Anubis and recoils. Another unwraps a shabdi, joking that it might come to life. It won't. That kind of magic is long gone. Then they find your sarcophagus, the room quiets. Awe sets in. The carving is bold. Impressive. For a moment, they forget it holds a person. One runs a hand along the hieroglyphs, misreading your name. He smiles. He thinks he's uncovered treasure. He has. Just not the kind he understands. Historians still argue about this. Some say it's preservation. Others call it theft. Either way, you are no longer alone. Later, they return in greater numbers. Cameras flash. Tools hum. Voices whisper observations into recorders. The lid is lifted with care. Someone gasps. He's still intact. You are. Mostly, you are measured, scanned, sampled. Packed in foam. Labeled with a bright sticker, Royal Mummy, handle with care. You used to command armies. Now you require bubble wrap. A museum takes you in. You are unpacked under bright lights. Interns murmur. A plaque is placed near your feet. Unknown Pharaoh, 18th dynasty, probable. You have become a probability. Your belongings are arranged in glass cases, each with tidy labels. Tourists stroll past. Some read. Some take photos. A child presses their nose to the glass. Was he real? The parent shrugs. Sort of. You listen. Not with ears. But something within you still notices. You are now a story told between sandwiches. A souvenir. A trivia fact. Your name appears in footnotes and hashtags. You exist in fragments, but sometimes, late at night, when the museum settles into its hush, you are alone again. The air hums. The lights dim. And something in you stirs. You remember, the Nile at dusk. The scent of blue lotus. The press of your headdress. The cool stone underfoot. The scratch of a stylus on papyrus. The sound of the tomb door closing for the final time. You do not miss power. Not gold. Not ceremony. You miss the wind. The smell of the floodplain. Your donkey. Laughter. A curator walks in. They adjust your tag. Wipe the glass. Say something under their breath in a language you never knew. Then they leave. You remain, still. Preserved. Not fully remembered. Not fully forgotten. Misunderstood, and that is the part no one writes on the plaques. You were never a god, you were just tired. You never hear your name spoken the way it once was. The syllables are unfamiliar now, reshaped by unfamiliar tongues. The vowels are guessed at, rounded or flattened in ways that feel foreign to your ears. The consonants, once pronounced with ceremonial weight and reverence, are softened into something faintly ridiculous. In a language that bears little resemblance to your own, a cheerful guide says your name aloud, smiling confidently, unaware of the error. They move on quickly, unbothered. Your golden mask stares forward, unchanging, expression locked in a gaze meant for eternity, not for gift shop lighting. It has been centuries since you ruled with command. Entire millennia have passed since the sun warmed your skin and the sand shifted beneath your feet with each step you took. The monuments that once proclaimed your greatness to the heavens now sit beneath artificial lights, removed from their sacred settings. What once stood brilliant and proud under the blazing Egyptian sun now exists behind glass, accompanied by plaques and headset narrations. Your enemies are gone. Your children are gone. Your high priests, your loyal guards, your court scribes, even your favorite musicians and cooks, all gone. The river that fed your kingdom has moved its banks. It no longer curves as it did when you bathed in its waters or offered sacrifices on its shores, but still, you remain, in a way, the pyramid you commissioned with such ceremony, such planning, such costly precision. Is now half swallowed by sand and time. The capstone, once bright and gleaming with polished white limestone, has long since been taken. What remains is dulled and worn, a sloping shadow of its former glory. The inscriptions that once screamed your name into the sky have been eaten away by centuries of sun, wind, and disrespect. They no longer sing. They whisper, faint and fractured. Some are barely legible. Some have been defaced, scrawled over with the markings of later dynasties, later conquerors, later dreamers who thought their legacies would last longer than yours. One statue still stands. It has outlasted storms and looters and political change. It holds firm in its corner of history, though time has taken an arm. A tour guide chuckles and tells a joke to a group of tourists. The pharaoh lost his arm in a tax dispute, he says. The laughter that follows is loud and brief. It bounces across the stones. The joke lives for a moment. Your legacy does not. No one stops to bow. No one lays an offering at your feet. The statue remains upright, but the reverence is gone. You remember once wondering about immortality. Would they remember your name? Would it echo down the halls of time like a drumbeat, steady and unbroken? Would your image remain, unmarred, regal and eternal? The answer is yes. But not in the way you imagined. Your likeness appears on keychains, pressed onto magnets, printed on tourist t-shirts in bright, synthetic colors. The golden coffin that once sealed your body with spells and invocations is now the subject of a television special aired late at night. Secrets of the Cursed King, the host proclaims, flashing a smile too wide, too perfect. They wonder aloud if you were poisoned by your brother. You weren't. But they do not ask you. They never do. Academics continue to debate your nature. Some call you benevolent, a reformer with a vision. Others label you paranoid, prone to outbursts and suspicion. Some say you were devout, others say you were politically shrewd. A few whisper theories that you were merely a puppet, ruled behind the scenes by a powerful sibling. One particularly bold historian claims you were a woman disguised as a man to hold the throne. None of them are completely right. None are entirely wrong. All of them are guessing. None of them know that you disliked large festivals, found them noisy and tiresome, and that lentil stew, simply prepared, was your favorite comfort, and yet, you persist. Not as a whole, but in pieces, a shard of pottery, etched with your name in a hurried hand, rests in a museum case. A statue, broken at the knee, still clutches the crook and flail, those ancient symbols of rulership. Somewhere in a tomb, on a wall no longer visited, your name is written in a prayer, though your face has been lost to time. The wall itself has faded, the pigments dulled, the plaster cracked, but the reverence is still there, lingering in the silence between words. It is not visible. But it can be felt. you are no longer a person. You are a puzzle. You are studied, debated, reconstructed from fragments. You are an echo of something once vast. A presence without a voice. A story told through what others imagine of you. You believed that being Pharaoh meant becoming eternal. That the rituals, the architecture, the sacrifices, the careful planning, all of it would carry you into the next world as a god among stars. But now you see eternity for what it truly is. It is not a triumphant march through endless light. It is not a throne in the sky. It is slower. Quieter. A long and steady fading, like twilight that never fully becomes night, and still, somehow, you are here. Each time a whisper passes through a tomb's cold corridor. Each time a child stares wide-eyed at your mask through the glass. Each time your name, however mispronounced or distorted, is spoken with a flicker of curiosity or awe, something awakens. Not your body. That has long since returned to dust. Not your voice. That has been silenced for centuries. But something deeper. The story stirs. The legend breathes, because in the end, what is a pharaoh if not a story told often enough, well enough, carefully enough, to outlive the body that once walked the earth? So you wait. You wait for the next scholar flipping through faded records. For the next visitor to lean a little closer to the glass. For the next child to trace your name on a placard with their finger and wonder who you were. Your gold may dull. Your statues may crumble. Your bones may lie inside a drawer, tagged with a barcode and filed beneath fluorescent lights. But you are still alive, impossibly, in memory's quiet corners, a ruler, a god, a man. You were all of these. And none of them, and perhaps that, more than pyramids or prayers, is what eternity truly means. Now, the torches are out. The sandals have stopped clattering. The chants have faded into the night. All that remains is the quiet hush of memory, like wind moving through stone halls that no longer echo your name. You've traveled far tonight, from golden cradles to dusty tombs, from the illusion of divinity to the all-too-human weight of the crown. You've seen what it means to be worshipped, to be feared, to be preserved in oil and linen and eventually forgotten. Not because you weren't important, but because the world never stops turning. Even for kings, but here, in the soft darkness of your room, none of that matters. The weight is gone. The headdress is lifted. The eyes can close, let the past slip away like sand through open fingers. Let the Nile flow far from your thoughts. No tombs. No curses. No ceremonies, just the stillness. Let it cradle you like linen. Let it breathe warmth into your bones. Let sleep carry you somewhere gentler than pyramids and prophecies, because for now, you're not a pharaoh. You're not a ruler. You're not even a name, you're simply still, and in the stillness, you are finally free.